With only 1 week left, I've decided to make a video about the craziest plot twist that could happen in Season 4. Please keep in mind that this is not a theory video, it's more of a fun what-if exercise. Because sometimes you have to think of the craziest possible scenarios and see if they could actually make sense. I'm really looking forward to this imagination exercise, and if you have any crazy twist theories of your own, let us know in the comments. So let's start this list with the wildest scenario. What if the man in yellow transformed into Donna? I briefly touched on this in one of my previous videos, but if you really think about it, it could actually make a lot of sense. We saw in the trailer that the man in yellow seems to change forms, and we even saw him growing yellow hair. In the next mini-trailer, we get a shot of an evil Sophia while she's in the clinic. Because of that, the most obvious assumption is that the man in yellow will transform into Sophia. But I believe this is a red herring. The show's producers know we analyze every frame of the trailers, so planting something like this would be very easy. During the conversation between Boyd and Abby's ghost, she said that this place feeds on hope, but I believe it's exactly the opposite. We've seen this place do everything it can to destroy every bit of hope people have. Before Boyd discovered the talismans, the monsters used to howl to instill fear. But once people became safe inside, the monsters stopped howling. To me, that's a clear sign they only did it to create fear, and once it stopped working, they abandoned it. Another great example is the situation with the rotten vegetables and the animals. Before the crops failed, the monsters followed a strict pattern. But on the very first night people started panicking about not having enough food, the monsters suddenly went after the animals. And then there's the fact that the monsters let Boyd live. I don't know if they took it personally when Boyd shouted that the place wouldn't break him, but clearly there's something deeper at play here. Hope seems to matter more than just being a simple emotion. We saw Fatima as the embodiment of hope. She was the one who made people feel safe, who made that place feel like a home. But in the last season, we saw her lose that hope, and she ultimately gave birth to one of the monsters. In my opinion, that pregnancy was only possible because Fatima started losing hope, and the baby being a monster was the final breaking point for her. I'm sure Season 4 will be devastating for her mental state. If we take into account that losing hope attracts bad things, then Donna becomes the perfect candidate. By the end of Season 3, she's just a shell of who she used to be. The strong, fearless leader of Colony House. So if this place truly wants to destroy every last bit of hope, wouldn't it make more sense for the man in yellow to transform into Donna? She's one of the pillars still holding everything together. Everyone would be devastated if she died, one of the longest survivors suddenly meeting her end. It would send a clear message. Your time will come, no matter what. You can't escape this. That alone would be devastating. But imagine something even worse. What if the person you look up to, the one you trust to keep you safe, turns out to be the ultimate evil behind everything? The very reason you're trapped in this nightmare in the first place. That would break the townspeople in ways we can't even begin to comprehend. And that's exactly why I think it would be far more impactful for the man in yellow to transform into Donna rather than Sophia. Moving forward, another crazy twist would be if we learn that Victor is actually a monster. Before you immediately dismiss this as nonsense, I have 3 pieces of evidence that might support this theory. First, there's the fact that Victor has survived in that place for so long. I don't think I'm exaggerating when I say it's almost impossible for a young child to survive there on their own. So maybe that place has a twisted way of turning the children of the original parents into monsters as a form of punishment for rebellion, forcing each generation to suffer the same terrible fate. Second, we have the female monster telling Victor while he was in the underground tunnels, "You know, Victor, if you keep coming down here, one of these days, we'll make you stay." This line is more ambiguous than it first seems. It's implied that the monsters knew Victor was waiting for Tabitha in the tunnels, yet they simply let him be. Isn't that a bit strange? And how exactly would they make him stay there? I think the only possible way would be by turning him into one of them. The final piece of evidence that might support the idea that Victor is a monster comes from one of his drawings. We know that Victor draws things so he won't forget them, so let me show you one of them. At first I didn't pay much attention to it, it just looked like a house and some trees. But after analyzing it more closely, I realized those might not be trees at all. They could actually be hands. And if you look at the drawing with that perspective, it suddenly feels like we're seeing things from a monster's point of view. Now, moving on to what I believe is the most plausible twist on this list, the possibility that Eloise is still alive. I've talked about this in a previous video, but in storytelling, if we don't actually see a character die on screen, there's always a chance they survived. Victor himself said that he thinks the body he buried was his sister's because only fragments remained. The show has also mentioned multiple times through Victor that his sister was very good at hide and seek and that he could never find her. That detail feels too important to be random, especially coming from someone like Victor, who isn't exactly known for casual conversation. Because of this, some people believe Eloise is still alive, that she may be the one who planted the crops in the forest settlement. There are also theories suggesting that the monsters didn't kill Victor because they made a deal with Eloise. They might have captured her on the night everyone died and kept her in the tunnels. We've seen cages down there, so maybe she's being held there. And that same line, "We'll make you stay," could hint at how they forced Eloise to remain in the tunnels with them. I'm sure Season 4 will give us more answers about Eloise and what's really happening in those tunnels. Moving on to another wild twist, what if the children are actually evil? We're told that the parents, in order to gain immortality, sacrificed their children. While they were on the sacrificial stone, someone told them a story that gave them hope, and that hope somehow poured into the roots that created the tree. Based on everything we've learned so far, it seems like the ultimate goal, the way for everyone to escape, is to save the children. But what if it's the opposite? What if that place doesn't bring people there to free the children, but instead the children are the ones bringing people there to torture them? It's still unknown how people are chosen to end up in Fromville, but there's a clear pattern. Most of them are at turning points in their lives. Boyd had just retired from the army, Jade had just sold his company, and Jim and Tabitha were trying to fix their relationship. Maybe the children are somehow connected to all of this. A lot of people still believe that this entire place is just Ethan's imagination. And for those of you who still think that, I actually made a video explaining why Fromville is a real place. So feel free to check that out. One of the main arguments for that theory is the fact that nothing in the town seems to follow logical rules. Take the electricity, for example. A child knows that when you flip a switch, the lights turn on, but they don't understand how the electrical system actually works. That's why we see wires and cables leading nowhere, and yet, somehow, there is still electricity in Fromville, even though the infrastructure doesn't exist. Another example is the monsters themselves, which feel very stereotypical. A nurse, a mechanic, or a cowboy. The town's layout also feels random. You have a big house on a hill, a motel sign but no motel, a sheriff's station, a gas station, and a hospital. Yet you're missing other common buildings like a pub or a shop. Again, a child would know that a town should have a school but might not think about including a pub. These are just a few examples. For a deeper understanding, I'll link my full video in the description. The point I'm trying to make is this. What if the town isn't structured this way because it's Ethan's imagination, but because it reflects the children's perspective of how a town should look? What if the children created everything in that place, and the monsters are trapped there as well, forced to suffer for eternity because of what they did to them? Those are all the craziest twists I can think of at the moment. As I said at the beginning, this video is just a fun thought exercise, not an actual explanation. But let me know your wildest theories in the comments. Who knows? Maybe by thinking this way, we might actually manage to solve the mystery together.